Quite a few joined there, and so I'll kick off because we've a busy afternoon. So good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, I guess fellow members of Engineers Ireland, and particularly our panelists, and especially our President Maurice Buckley is joining us here today. My name is Barry Hyland, and I'm Chair of Engineers Ireland in the North East region here. And it is my honour and indeed pleasure to welcome you all to our region today for what we believe is a significant event. So I'll just do a short introduction now and let things kick off. So firstly, can I say thank you to you all on your busy day for taking time out to join us. I'm sure you will enjoy this format. Today we are celebrating and discussing innovation and standards in business. We're talking to local experts from this region, and we're also honouring and commemorating the year for our President, Maurice Buckley. We do claim him as one of our own, even though he's not from this part of the world, but he is based here in the day job. So based on our members' feedback, we began discussing ideas for this event many months ago, and based on the obvious challenges that we're all facing, we still felt it important to do this, to honour the year and to have such an event. So it has certainly been, if I can say, different from ours this year, but you might call it a virtual presidency with so many Zoom calls, Skype calls, Teams, etc. But I'd like to say on behalf of members in this region, and I'm sure I echo that for members countrywide, I'd like to thank you sincerely, Maurice, for a wonderful year and effort and time and support you've given to everybody in this year. So thank you again. So today, as I mentioned, the event is a new approach for us in the Northeast. We're having a panel discussion, which will be moderated by Maurice. And it's an exciting panel that we've brought together today. So let me briefly introduce them. You'll hear a lot more from them during the afternoon, but let me briefly introduce them. We have Claire McAree, who's the Chief Financial Officer from McAree Engineering. We have William Edgington, who's the Managing Director of Dromone Engineering and an NSAI board member. We have Robin Markey, Engineering Design Manager from MACFAB, and Alan Kilpatrick, who's Network Manager, Focused Engineering Network from DAC, and also our moderator for the event, our President, Mr. Maurice Buckley. So briefly before I finish, can I say I want to thank a few people, because events like this don't happen without a lot of work in the background. So as chair in this region, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank people like Fergal Finn and Amanda Jane on our committee, both from NSA, who put some tremendous work out over the last number of weeks to support this event. Also our Secretary, Andrew Crowley, Maureen from Clyde Road. Thank you all for your support. And briefly before I hand over to Maurice, just some house rules for today, and there's not many of them around asking questions. If you want to ask a question, can I ask you to use the Q&A function, which you see, and probably most of you are used to using on your Zoom screen. If you can start with your question, particularly with, if possible, with the name of the panel member, that you want to ask, that'll help. Maurice, as he's working through and discussing the items and the points with our panelists, if time allows and if the question is appropriate, we'll ask those questions for you, and hopefully we'll get an answer and discussion from there. So if you can put them up in the Q&A, if we've time, and as we go through, we will ask them. To the end of the session, we'll probably have a 15-20 minute Q&A session right at the end to conclude that. Again, use the Q&A function and put your questions in. So if your question isn't answered throughout the discussion, it might be caught up at the end. And again, if you have any additional questions, please put them in there. So I think that's all for me to say. Just again, to thank you all for joining us to here today. And I'll now hand over to our President, Mr. Maurice Buckley. Over to yourself, Maurice. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Barry. It's great. I would remind you, though, all presidents of Engineers Ireland are virtuous. I might be the only virtual president, but we're all virtuous. So, look, it's great to be here, and I welcome everybody this afternoon. I hope you're going to find it interesting. I think you will, and you'll get a lovely perspective of engineering in the Northeast, where we have a lot going on. Remarkable amount of work going on, really. We're not doing the normal ubiquitous thing of every speaker showing 3 slides and talking about their companies. We're going to ask you to multitask this afternoon, and as you eat your sandwich and sip your soup and listen to us here, have just a Google there in the background of the 3 different companies and the different things you're hearing about. So I think that'll make it more interesting, and you'll get an impression of the companies as we go through anyway. So it's open, relaxed. I'll try and feed in your questions as best I can. And as Barry said, we won't get to everybody, but we'll do as much as we can. And we'll keep it as open and flowing as we possibly can. Robin, I might start with you from MACFAB and just ask you about your business making balers, compactors, which is we probably all know, but it's interesting that this engineering project is produced successfully in Monaghan, and as I understand it, you sell it all over the world.
Thanks, Maurice. So the company started in 1976. It started making molds for the concrete industry, which was quite seasonal between winter and summer. And so the company strived to diversify into a product that was less seasonal and more scalable and for sale globally. So in '96, they made the first vertical baling press in MACFAB, and that has grown to absorb the majority of the company. Almost 80% of the company is allocated to making balers. We sell very little in Ireland, but we do have a distributor base throughout the world, Chile, Mexico, right down to Australia. I suppose it's in the second generation now. Gene McMahon created the company back in '76, and it's in the strong hands of his two sons now. Gene is still there and will be for quite a while.
Very good. So family business, as many businesses are in the Northeast. And Claire, I think coming to you, you're also representing a family business in McAree Engineering.
Yes. That's correct, Maurice. Thank you for having me here today. I know I'm not an engineer, I'm an accountant, but
we'll forgive you for that.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about our family business. My granddad set up the business 75 years ago, and we started out making the VMAX silos just here behind me. And yeah, we're third generation now. My dad and my two brothers work in the business, and my mum has recently retired. So yeah, family business, and my cousin JP works here too. So we're based 5 kilometres outside Monaghan town, just on the border, and we employ 170 people. And yeah, so we VMAX silos is now 25% of our business. So we're now the remainder of the business is the sheet metal fabrication, the cutting, punching, folding, painting, HVAC ducting. So yeah.
And it sounds very specialized, and just while you have the floor there, in terms of getting staff to come and join the business and retaining staff, how does that work out?
It just yeah, it depends. It's the different departments. So on, you know, the admin and accounts side of things, we've no problem getting staff, but definitely when it comes to getting engineers and well, at the moment, welders, we're crying out for welders, and it's very hard to get the staff. And it's for years, it's been hard getting welders and machine operators. And yeah, we have a team of 10 engineers now, and they've come through. The last maybe 5 have come through Enterprise Ireland and Fusion graduate programs. So they work well, but it's just trying to attract engineers to the beautiful town of County Monaghan.
Yeah, and it can be an issue in many locations. William, you're also involved in a very specialized product, couplings. How did that come about, such a high-tech product, a specialist product?
I guess, thanks, Maurice, and everybody for inviting me along. Yes, if you go back to the 80s, we were involved originally in the design and manufacture of pickup hitches for tractors, but we also did many other products, trailers, gates, all sorts of stuff. So we were diversified back then, and we continued over the years to have the pickup hitch as part of our product line, and we were diversifying right up into the 2000s. But in 2011, then we did a strategic review, and we kind of modeled ourselves on the German Mittelstand. So we decided, it's counterintuitive, but we decided we wanted to become the best in the pickup pitch technology and the quick coupler technology. And we modeled our whole business around that. So the more we focused on that, our objective was to become one of the leaders in that particular area. So I guess today it's continuing to evolve. We're about 100% export to OEM factories from as far away in the east to we supply directly into Japan, China, Korea, and then if you go through Europe, and then in the west through North America and Canada.
Very good. Yeah, it is amazing and it's very heartening to see 3 companies so successful from Ireland, from the Northeast, and obviously competing with the best around the world like that. Alan, you manage the Focused Engineering Network, and I'm struck by how little I know about 3 excellent companies and lots of other excellent companies. Is that characteristic of the region?
It's very characteristic. About 4 or 5 years ago, it was identified that in the region, companies largely kept their head down. They got on with their own business. They weren't cooperating, not in a secretive way, but they just kept their head down and got on with their own business. And what was identified was that there was probably opportunities if the companies were able to know more about each other, to cooperate, to collaborate, and so on. And it was decided back then between the three councils that they should create an organization that would do that job. And so Focused Engineering Network was created.
That's Monaghan, Cavan and Louth, isn't it?
Monaghan, Cavan and Louth. Unfortunately, William isn't just on our patch, but he's not too far away.
Just over the border in Meath, yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on
Still
you.
very similar. And in the region, we don't have a lot of foreign direct investment. Most of the companies are family owned, and even our biggest and most famous company is effectively family owned. And that's true right across the region. What I found when I was going out and talking to them is there was a certain pride, and Claire's already mentioned it, second generation, third generation, and their parents and grandparents had basically brought them up with keep your head down, get on with your own business, don't brag about it. But some of the best engineering companies I've ever been in are in this region. And, I would go to see them to introduce my role and what I'm supposed to be doing and to find out a bit about their business. And you might allow the usual hour and a half, and you come out 4 hours later because people are just so enthusiastic about their business. And I have been treated brilliantly right across all the companies because I think the companies welcome the opportunity of having somebody like me or my position in the middle that might be able to help them with supply chain opportunities and to look at that collaboration and cooperation type approach in the future.
Yeah, very good. And I mean, that's something I think we should explore a little bit, how companies can help each other. And we as a country, I mean, through Enterprise Ireland, for Indigenous business, for the network that you're running, but particularly, I suppose, given the event here, Engineers Ireland. So, yes. What can Engineers Ireland do to support companies like yours in the area? Does anybody have any thoughts about the benefits that might be there? The opportunities?
I'm happy to take that one, Maurice, if you like.
Sure, William, yeah.
Yeah, I guess if we go back, pedal back to 2001, we were very slim on the ground in terms of our engineering capability, design capability. And it was the first change that I felt that we really needed to make around that period in time, but we needed to attract engineers into the company. And it was extremely difficult initially. And in fact, I remember interviewing one chap, he just graduated out of, I think it was UCD, and he politely declined. And I actually followed up with him and asked for a coffee. And I says, what are the reasons why did you not want to join with Dromone? And he explained to me that, it would only have been him in the place and you're very far away and all this kind of stuff. So we needed to figure out ways of attracting people in. So we set about working on that. We gradually started to build up the team, but the engineers Ireland element was very important. Having come from a kind of a corporate background, I understood in the early days of an engineer's career, it's very important that they have a pathway and an understanding of how to develop their career. So we aligned ourselves with Engineers Ireland, and in particular their CPD, Continuous Professional Development Programme, and got ourselves accredited a good many number of years ago, and we've continued to build on that. And the process is tough if you want to stay in it. The audit is good, it's quite forensic, but it's been very helpful in attracting people to join the business. We've 22 engineers now, 10 of which are working in design. I'm down about 5 to Claire's point. You know, we think we can attract them, but there's a scarcity there at the moment. We're competing with Greater Dublin at the moment and some of the other maybe what you might call more attractive industries, medical devices, pharma and stuff like that. So we have to up our game another level, and I hope Engineers Ireland will work with us to help promote this particular sector, in particular advanced manufacturing, which, to be honest, with the current deglobalization that's going on at the moment and the environmental focus, I think this could be an attractive area for any engineer to carve out their future career.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Robin, do you have many engineers in your company in MACFAB?
We have 5 engineers, 2 designers, 2 production and 1 electrical. We have similar issues being so remote that certain engineers feel that they want to be in the depths of things and in a high profile company like William mentioned there in biotech, etc. I feel that our unique selling point as a smaller family owned business is that engineers can get a diverse experience and knowledge of a project. Not only are they designing an aspect of the machine, but they can get fully involved in the customer feedback, the redevelopment, and the improvements for manufacture and for operation. I feel that some of the more, I suppose, less experienced engineers see that as a great advantage, that they will get much more experience here than they might in a larger company where they would be a smaller fish in a larger sea.
In a bigger pond.
And also on that point, Maurice, it works both ways. Like, we have engineers, you know, when they come for an interview, but they need to fit in to the business. They need to be able to respect the people that have been here working on the floor, the welders that have gained 20, 30 years experience. And we feel that some people come in here, and even though they, you know, for an interview and they're, you know, they have their degree, they, you know, they have the skill set, but when it comes to the softer skills, like, would we be really, you know, confident in letting these guys, girls deal directly with customers and their communication skills? So definitely, sorry, my camera just stopped there. Definitely, that sort of, the soft skills are important, and being able to fit into a company, and that's regardless of where you're, you know, where you're coming from. But I think in Dublin, the bigger companies, that's fine, you can go in there, but the smaller family businesses, you're more exposed. And just like what Robin said, you know, that you've got the opportunity to work, you know, not just in one area, but different aspects of the business, and the experience you gain is definitely be a lot more than what I think Dublin businesses can offer.
And I know myself from running a company in a rural area, it might be hard to get people, but if people come and settle in the area, they often stay. And you know, that you have that investment in developing them, but they stay longer maybe than they might in the big spoke or whatever. If I could move on a little bit, and just because this is technology as well and in innovation. So I mean, the world is changing hugely with digitalization and Industry 4.0, all the buzzwords that we hear about. So how do you manage to keep your business fresh and best in class, and how do you manage to decide where to put your resources? William, you had mentioned some design engineers there, designing products, designing process. I'd like to understand that a bit better, how it works in your industry.
Well, in our industry, and it actually builds nicely on the point that Claire made. That fit is key, and like within a couple of months joining here as an engineer, you could find yourself sitting in front of Massey Ferguson and Beauvais, or even we had one guy ended up in Changwon in Korea very early on. So it can be a bit daunting, but it's key that our technical team are able to immerse themselves in the market, and immersing yourself is immersing yourself with the customer. And when we are with the customer, you start to understand the trends and the demands that are coming on. The advancement in digital is absolutely there at the moment, and it's in all industries. The agricultural technology side of things is moving at a fierce pace with autonomous vehicles. You have autonomous vehicles coming through now in the construction industry, and using data to drive efficiency. So being with the customer and is the first way that you'll actually start to achieve that. More locally, then, we've been very lucky, and we've got the IMR over in Mullingar, where you've got the advanced manufacturing. It's a kind of applied research, but in there, our guys have been able to get involved in projects around additive manufacturing, smart technology. And now, more recently, they're about to develop the advanced manufacturing capability up in Dundalk. Once again, you're pushing automation, your cobotics, advanced machining. So all of these elements, the customer, like the likes of the IMR, and then the advanced manufacturing, they all feed into it. But fundamentally, in your company, your strategy needs to speak to that. You need to be understanding and where your industry is going. On the Western periphery of Europe, companies like ours, we need to be one step up on that if we're going to be competing with lower cost environments. And that's a differentiating factor.
You can never rest on your laurels. You have to keep moving forward all the time. Alan, can you say something about that advanced manufacturing centre that William mentioned there, that I think is being developed in Dundalk?
Yes, it is virtually ready to go. I can't put a particular date on it. That's down to them. But the facilities there, the machinery's there, and what it will be doing in the future is taking businesses from where they are now to where they want to be with regard to, in the first instance, robotics and robotic welding in particular. And I'm sure they'll want to build in that as a business as well. But it will be there where businesses can go along and offer them a live situation, and they can prototype it there. They will have all the facilities. They can train the staff there, and then that trained staff and technology can then be placed directly back into the business again. And so that at the minute, not speaking out of turn, but IMR is perceived for small businesses as being a step too far for them. And I think nobody would sort of deny that. You know, it's there for big business to look at big projects. The advanced manufacturing facility is nearly like a halfway house. So if it got if it got too big for the advanced manufacturing centre, it will go to IMR. But to have that in our region is absolutely terrific, because it's only a short distance from any of the companies. And so to get staff there to go and see what's happening before bringing that technology back to your own business and implementing it is brilliant. And I have, just as a slight aside, I have colleagues like myself all over the island. We have Northeast, Northwest, Southeast and Midlands. And even they're excited about the Advanced Manufacturing Centre, because when I explained to them what was happening on one of our Zoom meetings, it was like, oh, right. And in fact, hopefully, if we get rid of Zoom, one of our first meetings of all the clusters in Ireland will happen in the Advanced Manufacturing Centre. So it's one for the future. It's only the early days for it. And obviously, it will want to develop and probably evolve and take on other things in the future. But it's definitely there. And then slightly different to that, but below that as well, in Monaghan, you have the Data Value Hub, which is looking at all aspects of AI. Now, not just engineering, but if there's an engineering project that they're involved in and they need to refer that on to the Advanced Manufacturing Centre, there's the direct links there as well. So it's all interlinked, but all the facilities are there. It's a case of getting the buy-in of the businesses and starting to get real projects for them.
Certainly in Engineers Ireland, we'd like to support all those initiatives. Claire, I'm going to take advantage of having an accountant on the call. Technologists sometimes can be looking to always buy the next great machine that's on the market, or invest. But it all has to be paid for, and it all has to be worked into the economics of the business.
Yeah. I had this like romantic idea that when I started in the family business, that when it came to buying a machine, we'd be sitting around a meeting table and, you know, everyone, you know, thinking, right, can we afford this? I'd, you know, be bringing in the figures, but a lot of it goes on my dad's gut. And there's a guy, Noel, he's the sales guy from Leicester's in Dublin. They sell the Trump machines, and when I see him coming into the yard, the sweat's coming out of me, because I'm like, oh God, what is coming down the line? I did not know anything about this. But, you know, we have to, if you snooze, you lose. In order for us to bring our business into the next generation, we need to have the latest technology, and it's constantly changing. And our unique selling point is that now we can cut sheets up to 6 meters cut and fold, 6 meters of steel. So we have to be keeping doing something different, and, you know, having a competitive edge. But unfortunately, these machines, they're very expensive, and our profits for the last number of years have all been invested back into the business to keep on top of the latest technology.
And you're a big company, McAree Engineering, but still small in global terms. I mean, how do you know what you're going to need in 10 years' time? Because these are big investments. I presume they have a long payback period and everything.
Yeah. A lot of it is, you know, our customers' feedback, and, you know, being part of events like this and networking with people, seeing what's coming down the line, going to the trade shows when we were able to. But yeah, it's a lot of it is customer driven, and they will come to us and say, this is coming down the line, and we need to then ramp up our capacity and capability to be able to take it on
and make those calls. Same probably applies for you, Robin, in MACFAB.
Yeah, I had to laugh with Claire there when she said she gets scared when she sees the Trump representatives walk in the door, or Leicester's representative. Similar in MACFAB. Gene, the CEO, many investments are made on a gut. Granted, they're backed up by financial backing, but the gut decision is made long before the final decision.
You're very lucky, though, to have the owners being the ones pushing the investment. I mean, a lot of engineers are pleading, you know, that they and trying to get funds for their ideas.
I think coming back to what was mentioned earlier at the start about family owned and company pride, same goes with machinery within the company. A lot of the machinery in MACFAB is kind of the Rolls Royce well-branded machinery. Yes, there is cheaper machinery available, but I think there's a pride in the machinery that you have. And when you bring customers and associates for a tour of the factory, it instills that pride by showing off the high-end machinery that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is with the product, and Robin, you were telling me that, you know, a product even like a baler, you're seeing new developments on the market in terms of digital balers that sort of tell the company when to come to collect the compacted waste.
Yeah, I suppose your earlier question, how do we know where the market is going, and how do we know what the next thing to invest in? A lot of it for us comes from our distributor feedback. So what aspects of machines that they like, and what aspects of machines they're being asked for. And so for us, the customers or the distributors are feeding back to us as to where our market should be steered. The latest that they're looking for is smart balers, where our product compacts cardboard into a bale, which is manageable for transport. Now, behind the scenes, your supermarkets and things like that have created these bales it's very manual at the moment. They have to phone somebody to collect the bales and remove them from their site, and all that's very labor intensive. What the market requires is a baler that is smart enough to notify logistics companies how many bales are available for collection, and they can then schedule that into a milk round to be most fuel efficient in collecting bales from different users within an area. It will also be able to identify when service schedules are due. It'll identify when consumables are required. So it's prompting the sale of consumables and things to the customer before they have to come requesting it. It streamlines the whole process.
You have to figure out whether that would be a significant shift for your business if you have to go down that route, and you're going to have to make the call at some stage to do that or not.
It's something we've strongly looked into. We have some, I suppose, concept or prototypes out there that ping emails or text alerts to a notified person. Now, let me stress, this isn't within our company. This would be the end users. So the baling press will notify their collection agent when bales are ready. And we see that as being a requirement in the near future, especially within the Western world or within our premium markets. Now, we have other markets that they won't appreciate something like that yet. They want something that's very cost sensitive, but does the job for them. So we have to balance both things. We can't just send the company down one track on very high tech, expensive machines and forget about the markets that we currently have that don't necessarily require these advancements.
Yeah, I think there you're articulating a challenge that a lot of Irish companies have. You can be very successful for 10 years or 20 years, but if you're going to keep developing the business over a number of generations or over a longer period, you have to adapt as well. Can I come back, and Claire, I might ask you, one thing you'd mentioned earlier was you're crying out for welders. And I know in Engineers Ireland, it's not just about college engineers, it's also about craftspeople and apprenticeships and skills like that. And sometimes we feel in Engineers Ireland we're not doing enough for our craft apprenticeship. What are your thoughts on the people like welders and the next level down?
Yeah, and I see a question.
More important than the engineers to you, are they?
Yeah, well, they get the product out the door. So we're very, reliant on them. And I see a question there from John Coleman around what's causing the lack of craftspeople coming through the system. Yes, there was a period of time where the apprenticeships had stopped. So that didn't help things. There was a few years where, nobody was coming through the system. But like we had, just to give you an example, we held open days for school leavers, and they'd come in with their parents, and I see CombiLift, they do the same to try and attract young people coming out of the school. And they, that was 4 years ago. We took on 6 apprentices, and we had 2 then in the finish shop that stuck with us, and we just felt that the boys that had taken on the apprentices, they I don't know, like they were used to probably a cozy environment at home. Working out in a sheet metal factory floor, it is a hard environment. And I'd come out in the evening, and we have night shifts here as well, and the mommies would be outside with the hot dinners in the car, for their little boys, and that didn't help the thing either, and then football, the GAD, they were leaving early because they had to do the training, and then they couldn't come in on a Saturday, and there's a lot of different aspects, like the young people coming through, it is worrying. And I also think that the schools too, they need to be promoting apprenticeships. Like apprenticeships are great, but a lot of the schools, it's the universities, it's going to Dublin. And like we've got Monaghan Institute on our doorstep, and they're doing a great job trying to get these school leavers, into, the different apprenticeships. But I don't know, is it a generational thing? Yeah, as I said, video games, nice environment at home, maybe being spoilt, and then, you know, it's different coming then to work in an environment, you know, out on the floor.
Yeah, we have to put more thought in that. Alan, can the network help in this?
Well, I can bring an observation of whether we can directly help or not. In the north, outside of the aerospace industry, engineering now predominates around County Tyrone and mining and screening equipment. They have taken a slightly different approach in County Tyrone, which is, you know, a stone's throw away from where Clare's sitting, and they now have an apprenticeship degree. So they've elevated an apprenticeship to degree level. And this has only been brought in for this year. So the first year of this will start in September, I believe, for real. And they really noticed that people didn't want to come into engineering because their friends or family had told them, oh, you have to get a degree. So they've brought the two together in conjunction with the Ulster University, and they now have this apprenticeship degree. So you'll do your 4 or 5 years on the shop floor, but you'll still have a BEng at the end of it, or whatever appropriate discipline they're in. When I mentioned that here, now that has only just started. It took a while for the Ulster University to put the systems in place, but the immediate reaction I got was, oh, we can't do that under our system. Now, I'm a firm believer, especially as engineers, you know, nobody should say you can't do something.
Yeah.
So I think
And I think this is an area where Engineers Ireland wants to get involved as well, Alan, and everybody, that, you know, there are some more programs now below level 8 or level 9 degree level, and to create those programs to capture people who want to follow that path, and it suits companies, and the jobs are there, and then give them a track then afterwards to develop on from that and layer it up so you know, they can move forward.
You imagine from a recruitment point of view, if you're based in Leitrim, Sligo, Donegal, Monaghan, Cavan, Louth, just across the border, you now have that program. So if your son or daughter was living in the border counties, and you're thinking, hold on, they can go to the north and they can get this apprenticeship degree, and they can't get it in the south, you know, there's an issue there, and it is real, it's happening. So maybe we need to be responding to it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely. And maybe Dundalk IT, Dundalk Technology Universities, it might be, can help there, and again make a link work, make a network in the region.
Yeah,
and it really
it's
strikes me
definitely
that
an issue.
all three companies here are in very different businesses, but you're all processing metal. You're all, I think, employing welders.
Yeah.
And you're not the only ones. William, just to bring it a bit further, though, when we're talking about employing people and the issues, remote working is the buzzword of the moment. We're all working from home, or many of us are working from home during COVID, if you're in an office environment. But I think it's a bit different if you're in a manufacturing setting. But will that make a difference in rural areas like all three companies here are? Will an element of blended working or remote working after COVID, will that allow you to recruit people more easily or retain people more easily? Or maybe it's just not a runner at all for manufacturing? Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Maurice, can I just maybe elaborate a little bit on the last point?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's an area I feel quite strong about, but around the time Claire was talking about when the apprenticeships were not happening, she's absolutely right. There was not enough attention being put into it, but there weren't any people applying to it either. So it wasn't possible to run a course if there weren't students there for it. There was a review done of apprenticeship, and one of the clear outcomes of that is that it's on the progression ladder now. So if you have an apprentice, you can make a commitment to them that there's a clear pathway through to your degree and beyond. So it is on that scale, and I think that's an area where Engineers Ireland could play a really, really key role in helping to join up that machinery that's already there. You don't have to join it up, but help to promote that through the STEPS program, through the Engineers Week and stuff like that. you are right. There are new programs coming on board. There's the advanced manufacturing one that's been that I picked up on this week from somebody at another meeting. But I think the people don't understand in the schools that there is an opportunity to progress up through the system to get that degree. So it does need to start at home. You know, but we're all looking at the paper, and it's all the university schedules and stuff like that around how many are going from different schools. So there has to be more attractiveness to the apprenticeship side of it.
Apprentices, guidance officers really.
I agree. Well, we've all a part to play. You know, I have 3 young lads, and you know, I have to keep their minds open about what the opportunities are. And ultimately, many people work their way through the system, and they turn out to be business managers, own their own businesses because they've come right up through the ranks in it. So that I think there's probably more machinery there than we realize, and we've got to promote that at different levels in our ecosystem.
And the flip side of the coin is too many children are going to college and then dropping out during the first year.
Yeah.
Because they just did it because it's fashionable to go to university or to college, and then it's just not for them.
Yeah. So I think we all have a role to play in that. Then on the remote side of it, well, as the pandemic kicked in here, it was certainly a new chapter for us. And at the moment, half of our design team are working from home. We have some product managers working from home, some admin from home. So it's been a big transition. But I think something that happened over the years, we probably did a lot of work around lean and putting structures in place. So there was a lot of structures in the company around certain meetings and stuff like that. So we had to make the transition to keep those going, but some people are actually calling into them and some of them are here. So it's challenging. I think I have a view in this that if you're making stuff and supporting the making of stuff, that is difficult to do remotely. And you know, so your quality, your process, your design really needs to be close to the coalface. And I think it will be difficult to do, not impossible, but you know, in a medium-sized business or a small type business, that would be my view on that. I think it will be a challenge, but there are functions, of course, that would lend themselves to be remote.
What do the other panelists think?
Yeah, I agree with William. You know, we do have people working from home, and it's, you know, we're making it work at the moment, but we just can't wait to get everybody back here and, you know, seeing the product from, you know, that they'll be able to go out and support the welders, support the people making the product. So I think maybe, you know, 1 day a week, but in terms of people that haven't worked in our business and, you know, them wanting to work remotely from home, I don't think it's going to work if they haven't been with us for at least 2 years and know how we do things. You know, someone had said to me, what about, you know, you can attract engineers now from Dublin because, you know, they could work from home, but no, it wouldn't be a runner for our business.
Yeah.
I have to fully agree with Claire there and William. I don't think it would be an item that would attract people. Working from home maybe 1 day a week is good, that you can have a focus day. But with engineering, especially with production engineering, where you're problem solving on the fly, you really have to be at the coalface. And like that, for attracting new graduates or even new engineers in general, without an understanding of the company and the workings, it's very difficult. They really need to be immersed in the company to absorb how the system works, really.
And the culture of the company probably as well, and just the whatever.
Correct. Like we have in the past contracted some design work out to contract designers. And from our experience, you will never get a project or even the design 100%. It'll get maybe 70% of the work done, and the remaining 30 would need to be done in-house to fine-tune it to suit the parameters of the lasers, the press brakes, how the jigs work within the factory.
Mm-hmm. And just broadening it out a little bit, we've already touched on some of the sort of policy issues that the government or the country could do, like apprenticeships and so on. There may be other areas, and just to give you the opportunity, where you think the government could do more. And I think you have a particular perspective. You're all reasonably close to the border, as Alan mentioned earlier. You see the Northern Ireland system as well. We don't want to get too much into Brexit today, because the region, Northeast region, has a particular event on Monday evening on Brexit, but still it must be core to your lives at the moment, the last couple of years. Any thoughts on that one? What the government could do to support your business more?
Well, just with us living beside the border, we have a lot of employees that are from the north and work in our business. And like, to be honest, I was just Brexited out. The amount of, you know, the training and all the rest. So I think it's just great this moment in time that there is no hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. That would be a nightmare. So the government, you know, to continue, you know, to have a free, you know, the free movement of goods and people across the border of Ireland, it's very important to our business. And then look at, we're a rural company, and you know, it's the employment supports that, you know, would mean a lot to us.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I'm just, well, from my perspective, I suppose, like those points that Claire made, building on that, then you know, we're talking about the IMR Centre. It's in Dublin and in Mullingar, and you've got the advanced manufacturing capability coming up in Dundalk. They're fantastic, but we must realize that we're behind the curve there. You know, like, this is modeled on that German Fraunhofer system. We're behind. We need to accelerate that and not sit back on our laurels. Like, those units are not for Leinster. They should be for the island. And the more collaboration you get across the island, the better, because you have clusters of medical in the west, you have other clusters down in Shannon, Cork and stuff. So you're pulling in more expertise and critical mass into it. So I think accelerated investment in that area is absolutely key. The second area is, there's been a lot of work gone in, I feel, in silos, to use Claire's business here as an analogy, but there's a lot of work gone in around you know, apprenticeship and the FET work that's going on at the moment. There needs to be very clear communication, using case studies for our sector, our medium sector, to understand how we can develop skill within the business, upskill within the business, and attract people in. They're not dirty industries, they're exciting. You know, I can go to Intel and get a particular skill set, but I can go to McAree, or I can go to MACFAB, or I can go to Dromone, and within a couple of months, I'm working with customers. I can see the product from A to Z. If I develop, I could become a sales manager in one of those companies. I may become a purchasing manager, whatever the case may be. So there's real exciting career paths in that. And the government, if you want to say, the government need to continue the investment on that side of it as well, and use us as the voice of the customer to help them develop that messaging. So there's 2 points.
Excellent. Yeah, no, thank you. That's good. Yeah, it is. I mean, Alan, with the network here, as you said, the advanced manufacturing, there are initiatives there that are helping. And I think the cluster, I'm really impressed, just the idea of the cluster within 3 or 4 counties there in metalwork. You're maybe there's more could be done on the purchasing side and different things. Just coming back on the remote working, another aspect is visiting customers, and whether do you see yourselves being in planes as often as in the past, going to customers, or maybe when the supplier rings, the fellow you mentioned there from Lister Machinery, maybe you say, no, stay at home and we'll do a Zoom call for half an hour. Do you see business changing in terms of how we work with suppliers and customers?
Well, I think, you know, you can, you know, send a customer a nice video of what you can do, but I think nothing beats the customer coming in and seeing for themselves what we can do. You know, you can have an element of Zoom calls. I definitely think like our supplier Tata, for example, Tata Steel would come in once a quarter, or we'd have like a 2-hour meeting. That sort of stuff that could be done over Zoom. So I'd be encouraging that just for, you know, I think it's efficiencies. Driving down from Belfast, you know, it doesn't make sense. But in terms of new customers, new suppliers, I definitely think that face-to-face is as important as ever.
If I could step in there, I fully agree. So existing customer base and supplier base, you have that connection already. Whereas with new suppliers, you're building that person-to-person connection. If you receive an email inquiring about so many thousand of a part, it could be a real inquiry, it could be a hoax inquiry. But when you meet a supplier at a trade show and you make that personal connection, you know them, you know a little bit about them, they know you, and likewise, you have that, I suppose, trust. And as humans, I don't think that we will get around that person-to-person trust building through a Zoom call. Now, granted, once the connection is made, Zoom will play much more of a role. There isn't a need to travel out every year or every quarter, but certainly for the initial connection, be it with a supplier or a customer, I don't think there's any way of getting around it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you all a little bit about standards and certification in a moment. It's one of the themes today. But just before I do, there's a question there coming in from Fergal Finn from the North East region about automation. And particularly coming back to the conversation about welding and things. I know you're 3 companies and you can see it from your websites. And again, I remind you of McAree, MACFAB and Dromone Engineering if you want to have a peep in the background at the websites. But you all use a lot of high-tech equipment. Robin, I saw a yellow robot there somewhere in MACFAB. Is that welding or material handling? Or?
It's welding. So if I could just take Fergal's question there. We have implemented robot welding. I suppose the balance to have is making products common enough that the robot will accept them, but keeping enough diversification that you satisfy all the customer's needs. So there are certain products in our range that lend themselves to robotic welding, things that have common chassis that are high volume. Now, granted, we have other products that are lower volume or a lot more bespoke that I'm not saying wouldn't lend themselves to robot, but would be further down the pecking order. Now, when we bought our first robot welder, it was from a company in the Netherlands, Vatic Welding, and they gave some advice on who should be the programmer for the robot. And I suppose this is getting back to apprentices versus engineers again. They didn't preference either. They said that the best person to program a robot online was a good welder with an aptitude for technology. So a good welder that liked playing PlayStation essentially was the brief for the programmer for the robot. If you put an engineer on, yes, they'll do it theoretically correct, but they don't know the parameters of the welding side in depth enough. Now, granted, an engineer will work around that and they'll learn it. Likewise, purely an apprentice welder who is used to manual welding all the time may be daunted by the task of programming this machine. So I suppose that is somewhere that apprentices could go, the apprentice route, more rather than just on the manual welding, touch on the technological future of welding.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else in that one? Automation?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in there. I remember taking a customer around the floor one time in Dromone, and we got back up to, we're having a cup of coffee, and he's quite senior in the company. He turned around and he says, "That was really interesting." He says, "The only person who didn't stop to talk to us today was your robot welder." So I think it put it in context. It's you know, the productivity is there, the repeatability, but it's really interesting, and I'm sure the other guys will probably agree that it's becoming an expectation when customers visit you there's an expectation that we're moving forward. We're automating, we're bringing in that efficiency into the business because they're expecting that to show through in the quality and in the pricing of the product that they've got. So it's an absolute must in terms of and I guess the other thing is you must always, I mean, you need to be like the paranoid footballer or rugby player or whatever, you know, no matter what you're doing, you have to assume that your competitor is doing the same or better. So you got to keep on top of it.
And what's coming through from all three of you is that you're investing in your products, and your products are developing and new products coming along, but you're also investing hugely in your manufacturing facility. As you just said there, William, that's very important for the customers as well. Yeah. If I could move it on a little bit, a particular area we're interested in, I am personally, I was involved in the NSAI before my current role in the OPW. William, I see you're on the board of NSAI now, that's great to see, and Amanda Jane Gainford and Fergal Finn, who've helped to organise this work in the world of standards. Just explore with you, are standards a sort of an inhibitor or a help in developing your business? I might start with you, Claire. There's a standard in metal fabrication, EN 1090. I remember I was in the hot seat when it came in about 5 or 6 years ago, and fabricators had to be much more sophisticated in terms of calibrating equipment and training staff and lots of other things. And there was a fear at the time that a lot of the small businesses around Ireland, father and son welders, would go out of business. But how did that work out, and how did it impact on your business?
Yeah, I know when it comes to standards, it can, you know, when they start out, it can be hard, you know, the paperwork and the changes that have to be made. But these standards, we need them. There's, you know, customers that we, you know, will not come knocking on our door if we don't have these standards. So they've really professionalized our company over the past few years. So yeah, look, it's hard, like even when it comes, I know, to health and safety and risk assessments now, and suppliers come to our door and, you know, they're working in the factory, and there might be, you know, one or two men, and we have to say, right, where's your risk assessments, where's your safety statements, and they're like, what, you know? So it can be at the start, but we see now a year or two into it, you know, it's part of, you know, what you have to do now.
It's helping you with new customers and to get new orders.
Yeah, but you know, a lot of these standards is customer driven too. Our bigger customers, we have to have them, and if we don't have them, we don't get the business. Like now that the bigger customers will come in and they'll audit our factory for a day and make sure that we have everything in place. So, you know, yeah, it's very important that we, you know, we have all these standards, otherwise we wouldn't get the business. Yeah.
And Robin, I mean, you've got a complex product in the baler compactors, and I see on your website that they're CE marked.
Right.
Just explain to the audience what CE mark means and how you go about implementing it in a company like yours.
Yes, so the CE mark, there are directives that we have obligations to abide by, European directives. Now, although they're European directives, they're recognized globally. Our customers in Turkey, Australia, they accept the CE mark as a stamp of quality assurance. The way I see standards feed into it is that standards are a tool to help the company assess their product to meet the criteria of these directives. So for us, the standards that apply to our products, they're not binding, they're not legally binding, but they're a shortcut route to achieve all the essential criteria of the machinery directives. Traditionally, before these product-specific standards were brought in, we used more generic standards, and it was a longer path to meet the criteria of these directives. And so I'll give kind of one example within the directive. It in brief says that the machine, the electrical control system of our machinery must be safe to do the job. There is an old standard there that categorizes how safe that safety system is, but we had to self-generate a risk assessment to find out what category of safety we were to achieve. In recent years, there has been a product-specific standard for vertical baling presses, and it has become harmonized. But within that standard, it sets out the criteria, it sets out the targets for the level of safety of each function, which means that we can reference this standard. The fact that it's harmonized means that it's recognized to meet all the essential criteria of the directives. So it means that we have confidence in assessing our machine to a safe level and know that we're meeting all of our legal obligations. That gives us a CE mark, and our customers recognize that because our machines are CE marked, that they have met all these safety credentials.
A customer in the heartlands of Germany or somewhere can purchase from you in Ireland without any fear because they see that you've got the CE mark certification you need. Correct.
It also comes down to a marketing thing, believe it or not, because when large tenders are up for offer, the machine-specific directive, when it was first released and harmonized, our customers would come back asking, are we compliant with this new standard? Now, the only thing I can assume from this is that our competitors were using it as a selling point, saying, oh, well, we are compliant to the new, at the time, baler standard. Are the other people in this tender compliant with it as well? So without that, we would have been on the back foot entering into these tenders. So although it's non-obligatory to sell balers, it kind of is.
And I think you were telling me, Robin, just sticking with that for a moment, that you saw your competitors' fingerprints over that standard when it came out.
Yeah, so when the standard was made, look, MACFAB haven't been strong in standard development in the past, I suppose, like William here has been involved. But when the standard was released, it was something we had to work with. And in the pictograms and some of the details within the standard, you can clearly see what baler it is. And there's two of our competitors that we're sure had a strong hold or a strong hand in the making of the standard, which is unfortunate for us because I suppose we have to meet what they have set as the criteria. If that standard ever comes up for renewal, I think we'd be interested in getting involved.
Yeah, and again there, I suppose our colleagues in NSAI would be facilitating that and not only keen to facilitate it, which we can do from Ireland because as a small company, a small country, you would probably be the only one interested in working on that standard. In some of the larger countries, there might be 4 or 5 companies competing for that one seat at the table. William, you're mentioned there, and I know from the background, Dromone is a company that has got involved in writing standards or developing standards. What's your experience been?
Well, I think from any company's perspective, it's something worth exploring. Can you make the standards piece a part of your value proposition? So like in our case, intellectual property is key, the competitiveness we spoke about and the automation that drives that, but also the standards element is very important. The fact that we're so focused in a particular product line. So that's a company perspective, and it's something I would encourage people to do. If you look at the agricultural side of it, there's a whole list of standards and it kind of reflects the industry. The tractors are road going vehicles, so there's a whole bunch of standards there that govern that, and they've been evolving over the years. On the construction side, there's less because it's relatively new. It's an area that we were involved in with the assistance of NSAI, so we did have input to it. And I would encourage Robin and Claire to look at that because it's a long process. Paul Killeen was taking us through it this morning. It's a long process, but it does pay off in the long term if you can be involved in that. Now, Claire mentioned something very important there. The customers will demand it. and it will actually become a go, no go. And I can give a very practical example with one of our customers, Volvo. It was absolutely mandatory that we had the ISO 9000 systems in place, but it was also mandatory that we had 14001 in place from an environmental perspective, and then technologically to have 13031 for the quick coupler. And the fact that we were involved in it also helped us. And there is a worry there among companies that if a standard is developed, will it be enforced? Well, you know, the authorities may or may not go down that avenue, but the leading customers will enforce it. They'll make it, they'll demand it. So that's how it'll be driven through the system. So there's three elements there. There's the company perspective, there's the design element, and then there's the companies demanding it.
Yeah, very good, very good. Could even tell a quick story myself that I think I relayed in my President's address in Engineers Ireland last year. I remember coming back from Germany, where I lived, to set up a manufacturing company in the 90s. And it was brand new. We're sitting on a windowsill waiting for the equipment to arrive, even a table and chairs. And the Germans rang, it was a German company. Maurice, we can't get on to the DIN Standards Committee. We were developing a product, photoluminescent way guidance strips, you know, the yellow strips you see in a hospital or on an Aer Lingus plane on the ground. And they were ringing me, and you can imagine what I wanted to say to them. I was busy trying to get a new factory started. And they said, we can't get on to the DIN Standards Committee in Germany. Any chance you'd make a phone call in Ireland to whatever the standards organization is? We don't know what the name of it is, but is there any way you could get onto this? And of course, one phone call to NSAI was able to immediately get onto an ISO committee. And the long and the short of it was, a year later, the company in Germany was just about to spend a lot of money on very expensive tooling for a 45mm strip along the wall. And I could see from the standards meetings that the standard was heading towards a 50mm strip. So still a year before the standard would be published. And I could make that phone call back. The chairman of the company nearly went ballistic, but I said, no matter how good the product is, if you're 45mm and the standard is going to be 50, you're wasting your money. And that would have been a huge investment that would have been down the Swanee for a very small company. So it's interesting. It's all about how you engage with standards. Claire, any thoughts on this? Of course, the world of accountancy has standards as well. You just accept accountancy standards as a sine qua non in how you do your work.
Yeah, you just have to see them as positive and just get on with it. And yeah, look, it's like the engineers, you know, the CPD, we have to do 40 hours, and a lot of that is made up of going to courses and learning about the new standards and the changes. And you know, you've studied for years, and then the standards, like you have to be constantly up to date, because every year, like I did my tax exams a few years ago, constantly changing. So yeah, you just have to be positive. It's all for the good, and just go with it.
And that brings it back around to what William said at the beginning about the Engineers Ireland CPD programs for technical staff as well. I think it's an area we can help with. So want to pick up on some of the questions coming in online there, and Amanda Jane is here in the background and may come in to help me, but I can see one or two anyway, just to get started. One there is about energy efficiency and sustainability and the whole move across the world to addressing climate action and greenhouse gases. And so how does that impact on your three businesses? Have you noticed anything changing in the last year or two, or either in your manufacturing or your products? Alan? Yeah.
I could kick off. I had a meeting 2 weeks ago under the Regional Enterprise Plan, and it was to do with that exact subject, and that's going to become a focus over the next 3 years of the Regional Enterprise Plan. So it is something that is at high level at the minute. I also think, and it sort of goes back to your last question, I think companies are going to have to respond to it, because there will have to be some sort of energy statement within a bid Now, what that's going to look like or how it's going to look, I suppose it depends where the customers come from. But it's something that I'll certainly be looking at the regional enterprise plan and seeing what we can do as a sector to see can we blend into it, and then how we can filter that out to all the companies in the region. But it's certainly an issue at government level.
Yeah.
Down to the companies now, I suppose, to respond as to how they're going to handle it.
And I suppose there's what you do in your business, but it's also markets. I mean, Robin, in MACFAB, in balers, compactors, the whole recycling trend and everything is opening your markets, isn't it?
Yeah, so just if I could roll back to Alan's point there, I suppose even without government intervention, especially in family-owned businesses and driven by money, we've recently replaced all the lighting in the factory to LED, replaced compressors to new energy efficient models. Lasers, we have changed out one of the old lasers and replaced it with a more energy efficient fiber laser. Our paint booth, which consumes gas to bake the paint on, we have considered alternatives to that. So I suppose this is the financial side of running a business that will push it to be more energy efficient. Then on the product side of things, yes, especially in larger tenders, but again, it's coming back to money. A large supermarket buying 300 machines will look at, let's say, MACFAB's machine beside a competitor's machine, where MACFAB's machine might have a 5 kilowatt motor, whereas a competitor's machine may have an 11 kilowatt motor. Now, it's a very simple calculation over a 3-year period. How much extra is the competitor's machine going to cost to run with twice the power consumption? So there's the financial side. At the moment, we haven't had any, I suppose, legal or standard sides aspects to drive us into changing balers or products to be more energy efficient. But being so close to the market, we get that feedback from our distributors and customers that can we have it more energy efficient, yet not compromise any of the functions.
Yeah, I think Claire, as well as the silos behind you in the picture, McAree is also into HVAC, the ducting, and I know from the OPW where we're looking at offices and big buildings now with the awareness of virus transmission and the efficiency of air transfer and so on. I think it's going to be more sophisticated conditioning systems rather than less that the world will need.
Yeah, exactly. I know COVID has presented a lot of negatives, but there's a lot of opportunities that have, come from it as well, like the ducting and the circulation of air and all the rest. But in terms of the environmental aspect, we know what's coming down the line, like the focus on the news, everything. It's all about the environment. And just like Robin, when you're buying a new machine, all these new machines coming through the system, they're more efficient than the last one we had in terms of energy use. But definitely it's coming down the line and we all need to get ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. William?
From our perspective, I guess, I remind our people here, we buy in 2 decimal places and we actually sell in 2 decimal places. So cost is absolutely key here. And to be selfish about it, we must drive down the cost, and energy is a key element of that. So we have initiatives around the business all the time to help try and drive that side of it. However, from a 14001 perspective, we try to use that standard to help drive environmental issues. It's expected by some of our customers, but there are customer trends with this deglobalization where they're local sourcing. So we're actually being brought into play now because someone will not buy all of their product from China or Korea, that they will actually source the European product here in Europe. So it brings companies like ourselves into play. The other side of it is on the product side, smart technology is key. Like our host vehicles, excavators and tractors are moving quickly to autonomous electric vehicles. And we need to be able to make sure that our products marry with them from the environmental perspective. Also, we get a lot of pressure around weight So if you can get the weight down of our product, your fuel efficiency goes up. So it's important that we can actually link in with the customers on the vehicle in question and be able to highlight our contribution in reduction in weight, the increase in efficiency, and the reduction in fuel consumption. So it's all tied in there. It's important that you're conscious of it and you're building it into your design process.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's not just in your own factories, but also in how you design your products for it's sometimes the customer sustainability is what you can most influence rather than your own. Very good. We're slowly coming to the tail end of this and the end. I want to come back to Alan, and I'm just fascinated all the time. I'm talking to 3 different companies, but you all have in common the metalworking, metal processing to a very high level of sophistication there in the Northeast. And just this idea of a cluster of skills and technologies is fascinating me. And I know, Alan, you said to me that you see 3 areas, or 3 broad blocks of business in the Northeast. Would you just go through those very quickly and linkages between them?
I tried, as any business, I tried to understand the member companies that we have. And on my CRM system, we have at the moment 146 companies. I reckon there's about another 80 out there that I haven't seen yet in the region. And there's probably more after that. And obviously there'll be new startups coming along. But I tried to break that down into sort of manageable chunks, because I don't think the industry has got one issue. What I came across was 3 main types of engineering. And one of them, everybody will go, well, of course, is materials handling. We've got one of the largest companies in Ireland here, but even without that,
combi lifts and Moffats.
There's obviously a massive history with the various companies that have spun off from all of that. But there's a history here of moving materials from one place to another, and companies are very, very good at it. Some very small, and obviously one of the biggest, but we're very, very good at that. Another one, which is an interesting one, and it's only when you get out to talk to the people that you realize it's sort of our secret, is 13%. This is the statistic that I'm given. 13% of all food in the country is produced in Monaghan alone, in one county. And so there's a massive engineering industry that has built up around that to support that. Those engineering companies really are family owned. They've probably started off in the back of a farmyard, and some of them might still be there. They are world class because the standards that they have to work to, in let's say, for example, high performance stainless steel and pressurized systems and so on, but they don't realize how good they are. And so there's a whole sector there, which from my point of view is very interesting, to try and get them cooperating, because they could go worldwide and into other sectors as well, pharmaceutical industries and so on. And the other one that we have, which again is fairly low key, is suppliers to the construction industry. And what I mean by that is a product that is engineered that ends up on a construction site. And I have been, and those are the obvious ones, Maurice, but then you get into all the other interesting components that make up a construction site. And yes, we have people who put up portal buildings and so on, but there's many, many interesting ones out there. And so at the minute I've identified those 3 sectors that we have. I'm hoping there's more sectors out there, and maybe there's general. What I've encouraged people to do is, think of themselves where they want to fit into the supply chain. Some of them are very obvious, and that's okay. And then others might want to just be general engineering companies. But thankfully, what we have is people who are clearly identified. Most of our companies are not making components. But again, go back to what we talked originally. They have a certain pride of doing everything themselves. And as a result of that, they actually have a product. And so they're not jobbing shops that we have here. They're very proud companies with a good marketable product. And some then have gone the other way, such as McAree's, where they started off with a product, but now are a general engineering company. But they still maintain that product. And so those are the 3 sectors in the region at the minute. If there's a 4th one, or we can develop a 4th one, it would be absolutely super. But who knows what's out there around the corner. What I do know is we've got a terrific engineering base, and the employees, the companies, everything in the region is just terrific. I love being here. Love it.
Great. Amanda Jane, I see you've come on screen, working away in the background, looking at the questions. And Barry's again from the region. Any questions I've missed or you'd like to pose?
Well, just one that kind of has an overall trend. It's been asked by just a couple of different people in a different way. And it's kind of like, what could the engineering schools, so DKIT and other engineering schools, do to help to better support industries like yourself with the graduates that are coming in? What are the key skills that you're looking for you graduates? And I think that covers a number of the questions that are there. So,
okay, who'd like to tackle that one? Claire, you'd mentioned the soft skills earlier on.
Yeah.
You don't want a walking calculator, a walking computer that comes into your business.
No, I'm very passionate about the soft skills. I think that they can take you a long way in a business. Just like, interestingly, like we had placement students coming in to do like a month's placement around administration, business administration. And I would assume that taking phone calls, that was, part of that. But I remember one of the girls came in and she said to me, "Oh, no, I wouldn't go near the phone. I don't answer the phone." I was like, what the hell is going on? You can't answer a phone. But if you look at the teenagers today, they don't talk on the phone. There's no house phone. And then they're looking at their phone and it's through Snapchat that they're taking random photos with a text. So I think the softer skills, the communication, definitely, it's great, obviously having engineering skills, but I think across the board, in all courses, discipline. Basic, maybe a course too on common sense and cop on.
Oh. You're in controversial there as lunchtime comes through. We better let you get to lunch pretty soon.
Maybe that's, I'm getting hungry.
and a quick one before I go to the others, Claire, just as a finance person, do engineers know enough about accounting and finance when they come out of college?
I don't think, I'm there, we're there to support that end of things, and I don't think it's, a priority.
Okay. Robin, William, what skills are you looking for in young engineers coming from college?
I suppose, without being too flippant, I suppose an engineering aptitude, just an understanding of the basics. Like, I've had engineers that, I'm not that terribly old, but when I was young, I still put a chain back onto my bicycle if it fell off. Whereas I have had engineers who have never got their hands dirty. They've never had the opportunity or outlet to actually understand the fundamentals of engineering. Now, I've had other guys, master students or ex-master students and even better educated who didn't have that, but were among some of the quickest learning people that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You show them one thing and they just absorb it like a flash. Within 3 months, they had as much as maybe some lesser people would throughout a year or two within a company. But yeah, I think general aptitude for engineering, which I'm not sure if it's something that you can teach in college.
But that, you mean, Robin, kind of a hands-on aptitude?
Yeah. How would I better explain this?
That they have a toolbox at home. Is that it, Robin?
Not even that it's just physically hands-on, but that they understand. The way I see engineering is it's the application of science to real-day problems. Now, if you don't have a solution to the problem, the solution may not be an engineering solution. It may be a solution that you've seen in something before, a mechanism that was somewhere else. If you don't have that toolbox of resolutions, how can you apply them?
Very good.
Yeah.
William?
Yeah, I think sometimes there can be, pardon me, overemphasis on the hands-on. The schools, the colleges and the universities if it's an engineering course, they need to make sure that the core skills of engineering are coming out. So if it's mechanical engineering, it's going to be mechanics. You know, there'll be materials and so on and so forth. If it's electrical, that they don't lose that. There's been a lot of pressure, I feel, over the years to bring in engineering and management, or engineering and languages, or whatever, and finance. Like, if they come in, they could have an aptitude for technology and they want to develop as a technologist all the way up. They may have an aptitude for operations, so they'll go into operations, maybe GMs down the line. They may have a commercial aptitude and go on and be an accountant, or be a sales or a product manager. So that comes later. And I think the CPD helps us deal with that kind of stuff in the company itself. But when they come in, be well up to speed on what that degree said on the tin.
Right. Okay, that's putting the challenge up there. It's probably time to bring it to a close. I'm sure people will be going to 2 o'clock meetings. So Amanda Jane, unless we're missing a major point.
I think they've all kind of been covered. There was just an additional point there about supporting engineers or apprentices, but I think all the companies here are doing that in their day-to-day job. So I think they're demonstrating that they're doing it.
Yeah, and there's been a strong call out, I think, for apprenticeships and that path into engineering on the call today. Look, before I hand back to Barry, just to thank the 4 of you. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. Most importantly, I hope the audience has enjoyed listening to your stories. You have great companies, and thank you for being there. And I want to wish the 3 companies very well, and I want to wish Alan very well with the network. And look for maybe I might get a cup of coffee when COVID is gone, and I might take a day and come up, and I'd love to see your facilities in person.
Yeah, you'd be more than welcome to.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Barry.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you. And thank you to the panel. That was an extremely interesting 90 minutes. And thank you for all your contributions and questions. And again, I've learned so much today just hearing it from yourselves, industries, businesses who are there at the coal faces, Maurice says, doing it day to day. So can I say again, thank you for all your time, and as a token and